Where you are, we'll go for it. Call the meeting to order. If you would, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Lord, we ask that your grace and blessing be bestowed upon the men and women who have been called to lead our country, our state, and our nation. May we always remember that as leaders, our most important function is to serve others. Amen.
Okay. Before we begin, we have one addition to the agenda, item 3D. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, deletion of the first item on the closed session, the one matter concerning evaluation of specific personnel.
Okay. All right, are there any other changes? I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda, can I get a motion for that?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Oh, I'm sorry, nay, actually, because I didn't vote for the,
Okay. Consent agenda is approved 4-1. All right, next that takes us to our public appearance, which is the business spotlight. EBA Engineering, Kenneth Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman of the Board, board members. I want to just tell you how much I appreciate giving the opportunity to come here. Tell you a little bit about EBA Engineering. We opened our office on the north side of town at 311 North Madison as of May 1st. EBA Engineering is a full-service civil engineering consultant firm based out of Baltimore. I provided you there in your packet some information about our firm. We've been in business 31 years, primarily in the Maryland market. We've been in Virginia approximately 9 years. Our different services that we provide are civil site engineering, construction management and inspection, environmental engineering, geotechnical engineering, materials testing, structural engineering, surveying and mapping, transportation engineering, and water systems engineering. So we pretty much cover the gamut of any engineering needs that this county, the town, or the surrounding community would need. One of the things that I do particularly here in Virginia is I manage the Virginia operations. Our main thrust so far to date in Virginia has been construction management and inspection. We have contracts in Stanton, Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, Richmond, Hampton Roads. We have more than tripled our number of contracts in the last year and a half, and we're really excited about that. I'm personally excited about having moved the office that we opened a year and a half ago in Fredericksburg to the town of Orange. I traded my commute of 60 minutes down to 6 minutes, and that's absolutely wonderful. I've had a great opportunity to meet a lot of the business leaders in this county, and I would like to recognize our county administrator at the business appreciation. You're one of the first, if not the first individual to come up and introduce yourself to me, and I really appreciate it that evening. Thank you, Ms. Sums.
Thank you.
As I said, if you take a look at these different services that we provide, if you ever have any questions or need some assistance, or even just an extra ear to bend about a situation, feel free to give me a call. My contact information, I gave you my business card as well as on the back. And on behalf of our leadership in Baltimore, I do want to say thank you for this opportunity to come and visit with you. I also provided you with a couple other things in your packet. One in particular is a small orange ribbon pin, and that's to recognize work zone safety. Usually, annually, during the month of April, we recognize work zone awareness at a national level. It was actually started here in Virginia and then grew and became a national event. As we go into the summertime, I would ask that you and those that are listening to this broadcast think about your travels, because the men and women of VDOT and other localities are out there working in the paving operations at night, on the day. interstates and primaries, something that I take near and dear to my heart. Our desk, my desk, is 18 inches off a 70-mile-an-hour 18-wheeler. That's where we work. That's where my guys work. Personally, I sit behind a desk getting them lined up and taking care of their stuff, but I've been there. The only thing between me and that 18-wheeler is an orange cone. And so I share that with you as a reminder and to help get the word out to remember our men and women that are out there working for the contractors, the consultants, and the localities that are making a difference and helping to keep Virginia moving. With that said, are there any questions that I can answer for anyone about our business?
How many staff do you have here in?
Here in the Virginia market, we've got about a dozen right now. We're growing by leaps and bounds. In total, throughout the firm, a little over 180.
But the ones, do you have anybody other than yourself in the Madison office, or in the office here?
Just myself. I actually have 3 part-time managers that answer to me. One is in Hillsville, one's in Nellies Ford, one's in Fredericksburg, and they help me cover the state and manage our inspectors, which have to be out on site. Anything else? All right. Once again, thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Shirley.
All right. Next, the Parks and Rec quarterly report. Tim?
Good afternoon. I'm going to hit, do we have the snapshot that we can pull up on that? Yeah, I'm just going to hit on a few things on that before we. Snapshot, I'm going to hit on a few little things. The numbers are there. We had 95 folks in our spring gymnastics, 95 kids. It's our highest number since we began regulating the registration with 3 classes of 32. 96 is our total max. We were 1 kid off of totally filling out that entire program. We had 3, an new adult program, guitar lessons, which we had 3 folks in doing it in April and May, and they will resume in the fall when school starts back up. We use the schools in the evening for that. Our summer programs are running and registration's going well with those. Starting this Friday, it's Parks and Recreation Days at Kings Dominion. And June 28th through August 4th, we have tickets for $34, which is almost half of the $61.95 gate price. Last year, we sold 387 tickets during this period, so hopefully we're going to have another good month of that. A couple project updates. I'm meeting with Bill Metchnick from Land Planning and Design Associates out of Charlottesville on Friday to look at the possible dog park site. For the feasibility factor of that location. And then later on in the information items, there's an update on the trails project as well. Now we can switch over. I come to tell you all stuff each month, but the old picture is worth 1,000 words saying it's a lot of the things that you'll see in here I can't do justice with words. So you'll see a program later that I'm talking about. The first thing you see is our Orange County Parks and Recreation bumper sticker we had made. We are giving those out, and I think you all may have gotten one in the packet for that. It's been a big hit as well, folks. We're giving them to people as they sign up for classes, and they're going on coolers, and not on a lot of cars, which understandably people don't, but coolers and guitar cases and skateboards and anything folks can put them on. So we had our Hershey Track and Field meet again, and the east end of the county once again was the champions. Locust Grove Elementary in the elementary division and Locust Grove Middle in the middle division. 14 of those folks that participated locally qualified and went to the regional tournament last weekend, and we had 11 of those qualify for the states, which was this past Saturday, and I haven't gotten the results from that yet, so I don't know how they did in the states, but it was another good turnout for that. Our Barboursville Community Park walking trail, we've completed. It is getting a lot of use. It's a 1/3 mile long, and I'm just going to briefly take you through. That leads in by the 4 county players around the back of the playground. It sweeps along the outfield. It goes into the woods and curves, comes back up out of the woods. That's back up third base line towards the field. And this, you'll see there's still a bench in this picture. We had the bench relocated off the trail, so it looks a lot better than it does in this picture. It curves in behind the shed, goes down along the adjacent property, behind the trees. This tree you see on the left is about 18 to 20 feet tall. It's the remnants of an old tree. We're going to do something with that tree, a sculpture of some sort of carving. Not quite sure yet or who's going to do it, but we will have something done with that tree before it's over. That curves along the edge of the road, back up towards the shelter. And then at the suggestion of the trail designer, this cuts in back around the shelter again. He called it the grandparent loop. It just goes around the shelter, so it's a shorter loop for folks having picnics and things like that. Our big event we had up there a couple of weeks ago, it was the Friday before Memorial Day, picking and grinning at Barbersville Park. We had 9 musicians playing about 12 different instruments. This is about 40 folks in attendance. This is Troy Weidenheimer, say his name right. He is our new Parks and Recreation music instructor. He teaches old-time jam session, that kind of instrument style. That's the Barbersville Rotans. They were on hand to sell refreshments. The folks first showing up, gathering around. And you can see we had a multitude of different folks, and I don't know how they do it, but they just pick up and play with each other, and that's supposedly a style, the old-time jamming, that they feed off each other and do real well. This is the event possibly I'm most proud of since I've been here. We did a River Day, as you can see, Rapidan River Day, a special day for our special friends with autism. We had 5 very special young folks, ranging ages 6, 8, 2 14s, and 1 17. And had their families, had 10 family members, 3 volunteers from different colleges. Actually, my wife and daughter volunteered, but 3 other volunteers, one from Liberty University, one from UVA, and one from James Madison, that were all grad students. And they came in, and we had an obstacle course set up top, and then we went down for river activities. But this is what I'm going to go through and show the pictures, because words don't do this justice at all. It's quite amazing. The rope swing was a big hit. And this was at Rapidan River Kayak. We did it in conjunction with them. This young man in the red shirt you see had a smile the entire day. I mean, it was amazing. He never stopped smiling. And I had to chase him around in the water a little bit, so I know he never stopped smiling. These are 3 siblings of the young boy in the red shirt you saw. The family members came along, and Jason, who's our services coordinator, took the family members down to fish before we got down there, because once we hit the water, there were no fish left. They were scattered about. But the participants start to come down. And there he is again. We got him onto floats and tubes. There he is again, smiling. This is Ann's son that's here in attendance today. Beautiful scenes up the river. This is one of my favorite pictures. The young guy just floating there in the water, just as happy as can be. And that's my daughter volunteering. And so we had everything in a big eddy there, and there was a current flowing down, and we had about 20 feet of tether to a carabiner on their life jacket. And I was able to push Savon. I would give him a shove out, and he would hit the current and float down and come back. In this picture, it's hard to tell if you could blow it up. He's got a smile on his face. Showed very little emotion all day, but he's smiling in this picture. And there's joy right there, you can see, obvious.
That's cool.
And this would probably be the best picture if you could Photoshop me out of it, because all the colors in the background, and it's just a beautiful picture up the river, but I'm unfortunately in there. This is a good one, too. And that young man splashed me for probably 5 minutes nonstop and didn't stop laughing the whole time. That he had a ball. And you'll see at the end here in just a second how much of a ball he had. That's getting him in the kayak. I had a hard time keeping him in it. He was quite excited. This is one of my favorite pictures, just the sheer joy with that oar up in the air. There he is again. Then these last few pictures, he kind of slipped going up the hill or fell. I'm not sure how it got that way, but he continued before we realized it to roll around quite a bit.
Dirt's fun.
Yeah, that's.
And that's pretty much sums up the day right there, that young fella. But it was quite an event, and I'm not sure what was more impactful, the fact that we did this event for these kids and their families, or that these kids chose to allow us into their world for a little bit. Either way, memories were definitely made on the river that day, so quite cool. Moving on, this is our flyer for the Plan in the Park Independence Celebration that we have coming up. We have added quite a few sponsors to this since we made this PowerPoint. An ad will be in the paper this week as well. And just to blow it up a little bit, to see our logo, our Spirit of 76, we added a fiddle player instead of the sword and a bass guitar for the musket. So we're looking to have some T-shirts made for that and sell them as well. So.
I didn't even notice that earlier.
Yeah, we saw that last night at the OISF meetings.
And that's it. So I think those pictures do more than I can tell you. So just to let you know what's going on around the county and give you an idea what's happening in the other areas. Any
Great job.
questions?
Yeah, yeah, neat stuff.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, onward to public comment. Is anyone signed up?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, we have one speaker signed up, Ian Lawrence Grasky.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Ann Lawrence Grasty, and I've had the privilege of standing before you all as a business owner and in my current role at the Montpelier Foundation. But today I'm here as a parent, and let's hope I can stay, I think, as professionally as I was in the past. Our family has an autism spectrum disorder. 1 in 88 children in this country have an autism spectrum disorder, and specifically my 6-year-old son has an autism spectrum disorder. And there are many benefits, as we all know, to rural living, but finding services for my child is not always the easiest thing to do. So this spring, I called Tim and said, before I drag this child to Charlottesville to put him in some kind of a challenger league, what are you all doing at Orange County Parks and Rec for children with special needs? And he said, we're not doing anything, but that's because nobody's asked, and let's do something. And that was the last conversation I needed to have. We had subsequent ones, but that was the last one I needed to have. And he and I talked about what some of the possibilities were, and he, in collaboration with the folks from Rapidan River Kayaks, put this fabulous program together. And he talks about the smiles on the children's faces. I told him when I left on Saturday I was going to go home and have to take medicine to get rid of the headache I had from smiling all day long. It was just a tremendous idea, and not only did it open my eyes for the opportunities for peers with water sports, with other types of outdoor athletics, but it also opened my eyes to what this community can and is doing for our children with special needs. So I'm just here today to say thank you. Thank you for putting Tim in this position, and that you should very much feel proud of what was accomplished on Saturday, because I believe it's the start of a great run. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. Any board comment?
I just wanted to tell you all really quick, Friday night, I know that Julie and Teal, you all were invited, but I guess you were unable to attend it was basically they're calling it Friends of Rapidan, and it's a group that are getting together to look at the Rapidan River, and they're actually calling the group Stream Sweepers, and they have the point of Friday night was basically to introduce what they are intending to do. The biggest thing is that it's private, that it's the landowners. So far they haven't really come forward and said they need money, because what they're basically doing is trying to get the property owners along the Rapidan in an 8-mile section from Liberty Mills, from the bridge there in Somerset to Rapidan. And it's an 8-mile stretch, so it would be 16 miles because it's both sides of the river. And they're trying to get landowners through there to support this program. And they've estimated for about $10,000. This program will go over about a 4-week period. And they're actually going to hire 2 high school kids and 2 kids that are enrolled in college, or young adults that are enrolled in college, who want to have a job in environmental sciences, or they're going to get their degree in that. And they actually broke it down what they're going to do the first week of it. They're working with Rapidan Kayak and all, and they're going to learn water safety. And then they're going to learn about the ecology of the habitats along the banks and obviously in the water. And ultimately, for 1 week, they're estimating 1 to 2 weeks, they're actually going to get in the river and go through and clean it, take out the trash. And they had pictures of where, old tires and such have made their way into the Rapidan. And another thing, along with money, they needed access points. So they're going through to ask the landowners, because, you're not going to take a tire 8 miles down to get out. So they're hoping that landowners will let them have access points on the from their properties. And then once it's all said and done, and after they have studied that section of the Rapidan, they're going to learn how to do a report and how to report it back, and do a full scale project like they would if they went to work for an engineering company, let's say. And then they're going to present it back to the landowners and provide this for them. And what they want to do is that, obviously right now it's a one-time this year, but they hope it's something that would continue on from year to year, and then possibly even stretch longer sections of the Rapidan. But it was a neat group. Buzz Van Sanford and Mike Collins are kind of the drivers of this, along with they're calling them founders, but it's a couple other landowners that are kind of kicking this off. So I'm sure we will be hearing more information about it. But I really thought it was great that the citizens of Orange County realized a need, basically, from just going fishing out on the Rapidan. Like, hey, this might be something cool to do, and they've taken it amongst themselves to do the fundraising for it. They called Friday night's dinner a friend raising event and awareness too. And there was probably, I don't know, 100 people in attendance maybe. It was a big crowd of people, and they did it on Bloomingdale Farm in Somerset. So it was worth the time and very interesting. So I'm sure we will be getting more information from them as it goes along.
Okay.
Keep us cut in on that, will you?
Yeah, I mean, it would.
Well, I'm just thinking, the Rapidan goes through the entire county.
That's exactly right, and that's why they're starting out with this, 8 mile, 8 mile stretch, and to it gets a little wider, and it gets a little, So, but that'd be good. I think it's great.
All right. Then we'll move on. Any other board comment? Okay. Move on to our action item, the fee donation request from Gordonsville. Julie.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Gordonsville, it's about that time again for them to do their street festival in October, and they have asked that the board consider waiving or making a donation in the same amount as their tipping fees at the landfill in association with the refuge from the Gordonsville Street Festival. And so we don't know exactly how much it's going to be, because we don't know how much trash they're going to collect, but similar events have averaged around $113. And so what's before you is to consider whether you want to waive this. Since it would be the first request of the fiscal year, we have the entire $5,000 budget remaining.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, I have one question then. So this is moving into the next year and not coming off contingency from this year?
This is, we have that one fund for these types of things, and it would be applied against the 2014 amount.
Okay. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We would move on to appointments to boards, commissions, and committees.
Has the town of Gordonsville made a recommendation yet for their EDA appointment?
Not that I know of.
Let's see. Okay, so there are no appointments to be made? Okay. In that case, we move to discussion items, the update on the E911 center. Nikki?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We're here again to come back to you with an update on the 911 center and give you an update on the space needs study. And again, I have Randy Vaughn here from Wiley Wilson, and I'm going to turn the presentation over to him at this time.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you all for having me back tonight. It's a pleasure to be here as always. I just want to go through with you after our, back in February, we gave you a presentation. As a result of that, we've come back and taken some of the advice that you all asked us to look at some other things on the E911 Center, and I've come back to you tonight to kind of give you an update on our findings. One of the things that we looked at was how to reduce the size of the facility to hence reduce the cost of the facility. And we went back and met with Nikki and her group, and we've paired the long-term needs, which are still out there but many years away, down to a facility that will provide them for their near long-term needs, which what this would do is we went from projecting 10,200 square feet of space down to about 6,200 square feet of space. This would provide for doubling the number of E911 dispatches from stations from 3 up to 6, which would double the capacity, obviously, of your center now. It would give some administrative space, office space. It would also have the Emergency Operations Center located in it, as well as the support space for that. So we've gone down from 10,200 square feet to 6,200 square feet of projected space. If there are any questions about that, please ask me. Yes, yes, sir.
What's the difference between the long-term and the near-term?
Well, the long-term, essentially,
Requirements?
the requirements went from 6 dispatching, the capabilities to have 6 dispatching stations inside the emergency communications room to 12. So it would double again what you have now, or it would double what we would be projecting.
But we're looking at this, a 20-year on the near term, is that correct?
Yes, I would.
Yes.
You feel comfortable with that?
Yes.
6
So
would take you through the 20 year.
we're talking doubling the capacity in 20 years.
We are talking, what we would be doing with this facility would be giving you the capability of doubling the amount of dispatching space you have now, currently, which would take you out 20 years.
What's our percentage population increase expected for 20 years?
Well, one other thing we have to consider is we have mutual aid agreements with 2 other localities where if something happens to their center, they're supposed to be able to send 2 of their folks here. And if there was a large enough event that those 2 localities sent 2 people, thus 4 people, our center couldn't handle our people, much less what we have an agreement to handle for the other localities. So it's not that we expect there would be people sitting there 24/7, but there would be consoles that could accommodate our mutual aid, consoles that could accommodate training, or perhaps an event that happened that might provide for a swell like the microburst that happened at Lake of the Woods, or training exercise or whatever.
Did you define near-term and long-term in terms of years of expectation?
Yes.
I didn't see that in the, maybe I missed that. I'm not looking for, 18 years, 27 days and 4 minutes.
This would be a 15 to 20 year plan.
The near term.
The near term, yes.
So the 6,200 square feet is,
Yes, we would hope to get 15 to 20 years out of this space.
And long-term then is what? what, 50?
I would say 30 years plus, yes.
Okay.
But even at near term, we're looking 4.5 times the area that we have now. I
Yes.
understand that you're talking.
Yeah, if you,
limitations there.
the bottom figure at the very bottom there, there's,
Can it be blown up in the end all that?
sorry.
We've got.
Is that one in our
Go
packet?
go to the.
That table,
Go to the.
Yeah, there's about 14.
You got it in there, but you actually got it better on, back in the report section.
yeah, okay.
First part of
I
it.
looked at it online, but
Currently, you've got about 1,400 square feet in the space back here, and we would be looking at 6,200 square feet.
I suppose another difference is some of the offices that we think may end up
It's their
in
appendix
the
A.
long-term project that wouldn't be in the near term, like, the EOC or.
Here.
Right, there was other spaces that were accounted for, other more administrative
This is the report.
spaces.
It's bigger than 180.
Another way to consider it is the near term is similar to the situation that's in Culpeper. The setup there, the long term is if we did some more reorg with Sheriff's Office, Emergency Management, 911, and Fire and Rescue.
And this doesn't pick up the sheriff's dispatching. This is only for fire and rescue, correct?
That's correct, yes. I think that was one of the other differences in the long term was that
Right.
12 stations would allow you to increase or pick up the sheriff's dispatching as well.
The long term would be more of a public safety complex where the near term is a 911 center that's adequate plus some training space or meeting space for the sheriff, fire and EMS, 911, that could be a multi-purpose training area depending on what the situation required.
Or conversely, extra space in the event of an event.
Right.
Mhm.
Or even
That
if
would-
tourism wanted to have a seminar or something like that, I mean, it could be just general training space.
I guess I'm just having a concern here that we're talking about growing capabilities and growing capacity far in excess of what our population is growing. And that's an expense that, you know, we're getting ourselves into expensive improvements in county services. And
yeah, one of the issues, one of the reasons I wanna look at those numbers, there's a lot of space that currently isn't allocated to that operation. For example, there's, in the standalone facility, you've got lobby space, you've got male, female restroom space, you've got equipment space, and I mean, I'm now up to 1,500 square feet, I think, just with those things I just listed, that aren't accounted for in the current number.
That's right.
And I'm not saying they should be necessarily in your number, but I'm just, that balloons the number beyond,
well, yeah, in terms of space, you know, I look at the classroom space and the lobby space, and that space we've gotta build, but, you know, but it isn't. But I'm also looking here at the number of dispatchers. We've got 14, and we're gonna talk about adding 8 more. That's, what, about a 70% increase?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Huh? Please.
Just to clarify on the dispatchers, we are not looking at bringing more staff in. We're looking at giving ourselves the redundancy, such as if there is a call volume that increases our workload, that when we call staff in, we have positions to seat them at. Also, this will give us the redundancy. If I lose a position today, I'm down to 2 positions and that's it. So that's where we're going with 6 positions. Not that there'll be physically 6 dispatches, but there'll be 6 operational positions. So if a position goes down, I've got 5 backups. If I need to call extra staff in, I've got a place to sit them, and that's some of the challenges that we are not able to tackle today.
How much does one of these stations cost?
It's about anywhere from 15 to 25,000
For a station?
for a station, correct?
Just for people who are later listening to this, when you're saying positions, you're actually meaning stations, because some people will hear position and think it's actually a person. You're talking about a station that someone can sit down at
Correct.
and work at.
That has a 911.
Just so if
yes.
somebody else is hearing it later, they're not hearing.
Yes, it has the 911, the CAT system, and a radio.
And also we're having to assume that we have adequate space now, which of course we don't. So it's a pretty big jump from where we are now to where we're proposing, but where we are now is just so,
Woefully inadequate.
especially if you've ever been in a North Anna drill or anything in that station, and you and your partner are having to write at the same time because you just don't have space to
Yes,
function.
the training room, we're calling it the training room, but it's also the Emergency Operations Center. And I know with the FEMA recommendations from multiple exercises have stated that the EOC that we use today is too small. And you put more than 20 people in there and it gets a little cramped. So the EOC would have a dual function that it's not used every day as an emergency operations center. We know that. But we also know that we can use it as classroom space. We can use it for the sheriff's office, that it would have a multi-function
Part of the
property to it.
reason is they're going from an 84 to a 444 square foot per, I mean, that's a part of it.
Right,
You're you're almost doubling the amount of space, for the,
But the dispatchers themselves take up a very small fraction of the 6,200 feet. Whether it's,
yes, and,
that's where I was going with my other point about the lobby and the equipment rooms and.
right, and this 1,390 square feet that we're showing as existing space here, that is just the space kind of behind the door, doesn't include the restrooms or the space that you've got out here. So, it does.
EOC staff and the like, I mean, there's a lot of changes that get us to the 6,200.
Right,
And
and
the
please
dispatchers-
understand, these are just numbers on a paper right now. Once we get in, you know,
Sure.
we would move further into, actually sizing the building, laying out the building, designing a facility.
Counting the EOC space here.
That was the EOC, it was an office, so, okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's the thing that stood out to me was to get 600 more square feet for our dispatchers.
Right,
under
it just
this
sort of,
scenario, at
it
least
kind of, it does kind of grow.
you grow.
But, you know, you want to make sure that you've got that support space, the equipment area, the electric area that really is not very adequate in this facility.
Well, your discussion, it seems that the major premise of your report is the decision between a new building and versus trying to go next door, and that seems like that's
Right.
a fairly obvious, but that's appropriate. I'm just having trouble with the expense and what we're growing to in terms of how much it's gonna cost the county, and where's that gonna fit in our CIP? You know, is this gonna be at the 20-year point that we get it, or obviously you have needs that are far more immediate, but I'm looking at this and in terms of price tag, it's getting out there beyond the immediate affordability is the thing I'm concerned about. And I'm not sure that we can, how do we get you better without having to go to this price tag? Because with this price tag, it's gotta fit with ambulances and fire trucks and reassessments and all the other items we've got competing in the CIP.
Well, Nikki and I have talked about it, and I believe that there have been some conversations with Randy as well. We look at trying to move across the hall or taking over other spaces, and it just seems like such a tremendous waste of money, and also we're gonna have to spend it all over again, and we're still gonna have a space that fits no need. And so Nikki and I have had long conversations about whether it's worth doing anything if we're not gonna do something that moves us forward. 3, 4, 5-year Band-Aid is really a tremendous
So that's a waste.
waste.
Okay, so we talk about that, at the point is, where does this fit in the competition with all the other capital items that we've gotta buy? Unless we're willing to raise the taxes to pay for it.
Well, one of the things that Director of Finance and I have discussed. Last year, we had about $860,000 that we had almost anticipated going towards something like this. That money was spent on another project, but we do need to see if there are any funds that are like that. Every December, we look at the difference between our fiscal stability reserve and what is in excess of the 18% that is part of our policy.
Yeah.
So we would look at that resource for money, we would look at
But
resources for
if you've got
grants.
that available in excess of your 18%, where does that fit in competition with all the other CIP items? I mean, this is a CIP item, and you've got a whole series of them that demand funding. So again, it comes down to prioritization. And my concern is that the price tag.
Part of it fits in with it. I mean, we need the fire trucks, we need the ambulance. But if we can't get to the workstation to tell them where the hell to go, it doesn't really much matter. They're not gonna get there.
Well, I'm a huge proponent of when you're looking at something, you need to be able to ascertain how you're gonna pay for it. I ultimately think at the end of the day, we need to decide where we wanna be. And I think we're trying to probably answer too many questions at a time when, I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah,
is the fire truck important or is the 911 center important? Is opening up the new middle school important or is having up-to-date equipment important? So obviously, all of those questions have to be answered, but I think what we first need to define is what is it that we need and how do we get to what we need?
Well, and that's part of my concern about this, is if we had one that was a $1 million price tag versus a 2.5 or whatever it was, fitting it into the scheme of things and fitting it in sooner is we're more able to do that.
When you say this is the 6,200 is the size of Culpeper, is that the total building of Culpeper, or is that just that's the total building?
Yes, that's correct.
And what was that price tag on that building? And realizing site work is a little bit different and
When they built the building, it was at 1.5 million, but please note some of the building codes for essential public safety facilities have changed, so their square foot dollar amount, we will never be able to get to that again. So I'm sure if we took the same building and applied today's standards and projected costs, it would be approximately the same. And that building was built in 2004.
Yeah, I noticed you used $250 a square foot, which is a pretty hefty number for a single-story building, story building.
And it is, and not knowing what construction costs is gonna be doing in the next year, that's, I wanted to make sure we were, it's a lot easier to come back and say we can do it for $220 a square foot than coming in and saying we can do it for
And
You're
$250.
talking about this being seismic
No,
But
I
the two-
understand, it's a.
But
The
it's
two-
seismic, it's also the electrical costs drive it up. I mean, when
Nikki,
you're,
the 2 million also includes all the equipment and everything, and it's like
Yes, this
the
would
lights
be,
are turned on in somebody's home.
yes,
Okay.
because we can repurpose the equipment that we have. Here is modern equipment, it's just the space and the infrastructure. So we can repurpose equipment, which is a huge cost savings.
Maybe,
Assuming that we don't get a good lightning strike between now and when we move
Yes.
it, and it's gone.
Well, and assuming that the Gordon building doesn't catch on fire and we're not having to do it anyway. So, I mean, all that kind of stuff happens. You can not have an emergency and everything be perfect, or you can, you know, as Teal used to use the train wreck here in the town of Orange, and, you know, and the whole town shuts down and we can't be here. I mean, any of those things could happen.
I mean, the easiest thing for us to do is just to throw this into the CIP at this price tag. But I'm thinking if we looked at something,
Well,
if there was some way of getting it less expensive.
I'm thinking we need to at least take a look at, from an analytical standpoint at, I think I'm seeing about 4 different components here. And to get to the point of distinguishing among priorities, it might be helpful to see which are the pieces that are absolutely 911 center, you know, the dispatchers, their consoles, the equipment, those kind of
I
things.
like
There's sort of a piece there that is actually two pieces, I should say. There's the equipment piece, the cost of the consoles and the like. And then there's the facility cost that is pure 911. Then there's another cost that deals with having the EOC, the classroom space and the like. And then there's a parasitic cost, which is the lobby, the bathrooms and the equipment rooms and all those kind of things. And so all of a sudden if you had those numbers or that perspective, and maybe there's more than before, I don't know, I'm just sort of presenting a thought process, because it will come down to trading off opening another school or buying a fire truck or a school bus or whatever the thing is, versus, you know, pieces like this. And I'm not sure that I'm convinced that it's an all or nothing bite at this point. I mean, can we buy 3 consoles instead of 6 and buy 6 a few months later, or does that make no sense in terms of the economies of scale? These kind of questions. I'm not asking for answers. I'm just, I can tell you we're going to have to look at it in smaller chunks. And it would be helpful to know what the relative priorities are, or how those chunks fit together.
But I would imagine, even if you said, okay, I save, only put in 3 consoles or 4, I'm only saving 50 grand. Plus the cost of getting everybody out there to install the other 2 is probably more than covers your savings.
Very likely.
I just came up with a really crazy idea, and the person I'm gonna suggest might really hate me when I suggest this. Why? Because I realized the last time you all were here, I think we were kind of trying to ask this the last time you were here, and maybe we didn't effectively communicate with you to tell you what it is we actually wanted to hear. But I don't know, maybe if Lee or Jim might want to meet with you, because
That's something.
I'm sorry.
Anything that's portable. Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, you might.
What were you gonna say?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think because you're gonna come back here again, and we're gonna do this again, because you're still not answering. You know, we might say to you, well, you're not answering what we want to know, and maybe, and it doesn't have to be you. It can be me. It's just gonna have to be after 4:30. You know, we need to narrow it and bring it down a little bit more, and you can hear from us what it is we actually want from you.
I mean, I'm just looking here, and I'm not sure that in terms of trimming piece by piece, that we're gonna save a lot.
I suppose Nikki and I have met with Randy 3 or 4 more times since the last board meeting, and we believed that we had communicated, but we can definitely further clarify.
But I think the important distinction is that we are getting more than just what the bare bones and necessity for the 911 center.
We're getting more
redundancy.
We're getting more than replicating, because what we have isn't sufficient.
But we're getting more than even if we found a way to make the current sufficient, because then we're adding the ability to comply with our neighboring county agreements. We're adding classroom space. We're adding EOC space.
Well, how many people does Culpeper have?
And these kind of things. And so
What is the population of Culpeper? Total, town and county.
It's 40-something, 43,000.
All right, 43,000. So when they built their 911 center, I'm not thinking they built a 5-year 911 center. I'm thinking they built a 15 to 20 year or more.
Correct.
Population-wise. We are
34, 35.
35. So we are like 40% behind them in population. My math isn't the greatest in the world right now off the top of my head. So if they built a 6,200 square foot facility, projecting out a 20-year building from 2005, I mean, surely 6,200 square feet is more than a 10-year building for us. I say a 6,200 square foot building, if we follow Culpeper, unless Culpeper built a 10-year building. I don't know. If it serves Culpeper at that size, surely it could serve us.
the problem is the space. I mean, a lobby's a lobby. A bathroom's a bathroom. You know, you have the things that are unrelated to the number of dispatchers that you have up to some point, and that just kills you space-wise when you.
Well, you know, it would be interesting to see how much of this breakdown of the costs of these various areas, because you know, to get into electrical, yeah, you're not gonna make it, you can't trim a lot of that out. The size of the building, yeah, if I cut the size of the building by 20%, 30%, I'm not gonna save 20 or 30% of the funding.
No, but it's also not fair for, and I'll make it personal, for Nikki or her operation to carry the burden of justifying this whole budget, because we're getting more than just
Right.
her operation.
I agree with you.
That's really part of the point I was trying to get at. We need to, when we come to the prioritization phase of this, in fairness to everybody, the EOC has to pick up a piece in terms of its relative priority to other things, as well as the 911 center, and the sheriff's office, or anyone else that potentially would benefit from
Well, yeah, 'cause you're
training
putting
space or whatever.
You know,
So-
director of emergency management in there. I mean, you're right, you're putting more than just,
Yeah.
This is not just a 911 center.
And, you know, I mean, if you're gonna have your 911 center out there, that's where you gotta have your EOC.
Right.
I mean, you know,
Mhm.
you don't wanna have to communicate electronically between this and,
No.
yeah, so, I mean, you've gotta
It's
have
all-
it
It's
there.
all, it's all gonna be one.
What, I'm sorry,
It all has to be one.
yeah, I agree, I mean, that's it, and I'm looking, and I'm just, yeah, I'm not sure what I can crank out here to save, but the point is that I just see this as one of these pretty big items in the CIP, and it gets, you know.
Well, maybe the next step, and I don't know whether we do it by some of us getting involved, or Nikki and Julie and Randy do it, or what, is think of this in terms of the budgeting process as an exercise, and, you know, how would you make this into a project that could be funded? Where would you find the money? How would you break it into pieces? If you could break it into pieces, how would you phase it?
And we do prioritize it reasonably high. If you recall in the budget presentation, we already alluded in the county administrator's proposed budget that we would love to see any nickel that's left over from the excess fiscal stability reserve and other such areas go towards this.
Were we looking at this
project.
price tag when we were looking at it that way?
We were looking at whatever, we didn't know what the price tag was. We knew that Culpeper's was 1.5, 8 years ago, so,
No.
And I don't wanna start the budget process now.
Sure.
I'm not going that far, but
Yeah, we
but at
just
least-
finished that thing.
Yeah, yeah.
well, like if you, I
we
guess what,
understood that it would
if
be
you're financing it, what would it cost every year to finance it? You know, we're not,
Yeah,
are
these
we,
kind of things.
Yeah.
Sort of the,
how long could you finance it for? Could you get a grant? Could you know?
What we were hoping was to take the $800 and some thousand last year plus another 800 and some from this year. We have no idea what it's gonna be this year. We know last year's is gone. But we were hoping to get a good $1.5–2 million from excess reserves or from monies that we came in short on projects or whatever. So we were looking to get a good $1.5–2 million from funds that weren't financing and other such things. So we weren't trying to perhaps add to the debt, but we know now that we will probably have to take some sort of debt for some of this anyway, because we
But-
took a big chunk of reserves last year.
I understand that, and I'm saying, so even if you have this kind of money, then it still has to compete with all the other demands, and again, I mean, I can see this as a important priority, but
but
again.
maybe you also look at some other, maybe you look at lease purchase options, things like that. You get someone to build the building to suit. It's a very expensive, way of doing it, but we should understand how it, how much that adds to the cost.
Yeah, but we should control this building.
I mean,
Well, no, I'm not saying we don't control it. But you can do a lease to purchase and have it defined.
sure, I mean, you
It
do.
costs you to do that, but
And if
it's
you
an
know,
option that we should at least understand.
Ted
But
called it-
again, that also goes against our, even a lease to purchase goes against our obligation in terms of what debt service we can carry.
Well, Ted Cole did look at this when he did his analysis. Of course, it was before the 6.2 or whatever that amount is. So we were well within our affordability prior to the 6.2. Now we need to look at it again in a different way, because again, we blew past that 15% quite significantly.
For some number of years.
I'm not, as I look through this, there's not, I'm not sure that say, well, I can cut out the 500 square foot, or cut out the training room or something like that. I don't see that as being,
So I'm not hearing you say, take out the bathrooms and put porta-johns out back. I'm not hearing that, okay.
No,
good.
you're not.
Run over to the sheriff's office.
I mean, my first question was, why did I mean, if I actually have the little, the 60-foot dispatch toilet, and I'm saying, why do I need the other big restrooms? And I never had that many people, and I say, oh, but I could have a classroom with 75 people, that means I might have to do more than have a one-holer. So I'm not sure that, and maybe we can look at this a little bit more, but I'm not sure that there's anything I can see here that are gonna, you know, I think you're probably gonna have to look at some sort of funding option.
It wasn't funny until she got to laugh.
But, well, you also,
You're not gonna go in labor, are you? Okay.
you'll wanna remember,
We have emergency personnel here, so we're all right.
you'll wanna remember that this also, those restrooms have to serve when you're in emergency operation mode too.
Understand.
So,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
it is a big, admittedly, it's a big step from where you are now,
Understand.
but,
Quite simply, where we are now was good 20 years ago. It's not good enough today.
right.
And it's something that we prioritized a while back. We need to get to the point where we need to figure out how we're gonna make it happen.
I agree with you, Teal.
I think that's.
It's no longer really a question of if, it's a question of when and how. The last presentation was on no how, no way, because that was too big, but,
Well, and hopefully we heard you and tried to get the project
Yeah,
scaled
it's,
back. It's
I
still, I understand it's more than
Well,
what we had hoped, but
If you, I mean, if you scale back you know, the kitchen or something like that, what are you saving there? Not a lot.
that's right.
You know, I mean,
now, your big cost per square foot is your electric and your seismic. You take regular, everyday square foot, it's $100 a square foot. We can't build regular, and for what you're doing, that's the driver of all the cost. So cutting down the kitchen doesn't get you anything.
I know, that's what I'm saying, it's just, none of that is gonna, I mean, whether this building is 6,200 square feet or 5,500 square feet isn't gonna have a significant difference in cost.
That's correct, that's
No,
correct.
because
You're gonna have a
important
certain,
What we're talking about is also filling up the station desk with all the equipment, not just square footage cost of actual construction, but finished space, turnkey space.
Well, I don't know where we can cut it, so, I guess it goes in the CIP on that price unless, you have any creative ideas for changing the character of this. I can't see any. And so it probably comes down to, do we come up with creative financing?
Well, I think that we're looking at the queen of creative financing with Nikki and the grants that she's been able to accomplish,
Queen.
but we will have to take a number of different approaches. I mean, just getting the phone system that's required. Nikki's gotten grants, she's gotten extensions of grants, she's gotten financing and other
Yeah,
such things.
yeah.
So I think that it's a given that we're gonna be as creative and determined as we can be.
What do we, I mean, just in general, what are we seeing in the availability of grants these days?
Unfortunately, because this is a non-consolidation project, there is no grant funding available for this project. We've already researched that.
I'm just thinking grants in general are you know, sequestration and everything else is, you know, grants are not gonna be something that we can rely on very heavily. All right.
I've got the rest of the presentation was just comparing the two alternatives. You guys, if you'd like to see that, that's fine.
You already sold me on that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was easy.
I'll just quit while I'm ahead then, shall I?
I
Thank
didn't have to
you.
read many pages of that to go, no.
Yeah, I think that's quite self-evident, and the other idea about, locating it at the new building is that you can make it the size that it needs to be instead of buying more square footage than you need, so I think that's pretty self-evident.
Of course, we also get something out of this that isn't all that direct, but we get more space available in this building for whatever. You know,
Yeah, there's a lot of those, and the sheriff has a training room that potentially that they could use.
I mean, there's a lot of benefits across the board.
Have you looked in enough detail at the site to make sure that we're okay with drain fields and parking and those kind of things?
We did do the preliminary site layout here, that, now, we do show a drain field area, that's just basically, that's based on similar size to what the sheriff's building has. This is still a pretty high level look.
How much water is this gonna take?
The water would be not just domestic water, would not be that much. I mean, you're talking just a few restrooms and so forth. Now, if we can build this facility without going to fire sprinkler systems. If we went to a fire sprinkler system, I understand that there may be some
Can you
issues
get
with
away
that.
without, I mean, can you do
You-
that without?
You can, yes, sir.
Do we meet all those standards that you cited throughout your report?
Well, you would not necessarily fully meet the NFPA 1221 standard, because they do require that the center be fully sprinkled or protected with fire protection sprinkler systems. But again, that is a recommendation, that's not a hard, fast standard. So
How about all the other standards you referred to? Seismic, is that a hard and fast?
that's a code
Especially
requirement, yeah. And after last year's incidents, but on a single-story building like this, that's not a particularly onerous requirement. You just have to understand it, build it in, and it does require a certain more robust, obviously more robust structure than what you would ordinarily construct.
I don't necessarily want sprinklers all over my high-tech, high-dollar computers.
Especially if you've ever been in a room where one of those heads have blown off, just because, yeah.
Well, and there are precautions you can go through to minimize that, but yeah, you still have water in the room, so.
Okay.
If there are any other questions,
Foul
I'd
smell in the whole
be
place.
glad to answer them.
Oh, it's foul.
Okay.
We're good.
Well, thank you very much. No,
Thank you,
I
Ralph.
appreciate
Thank you.
appreciate you all. Thanks.
Okay, to wrap up really quick then, any question on the information items or the committee reports? Okay, in that case, it's about time then to recess. I assume we're going into closed meeting?
Yes, sir. Ready?
Yes.
Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Orange County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following matters: consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of public body, and consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to 2.23711A7 of the Code of Virginia. And whereas pursuant to said code section, such discussions may occur in closed meeting, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Orange County does hereby authorize discussion of the aforesaid matter in closed meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very closed.
You can almost do that with
Okay,
Ready?
we are ready.
To the best of your knowledge, were the only matters discussed in the closed meeting public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Need a roll call.
Mr. Frame,
Aye.
Mrs. Ash,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, Mr. Goodwin,
Aye.
and Mr. White.
Aye.
Okay. That brings us us up to the point of public comment for the Route 3 Strategic Planning Initiative. Do we have any speakers signed up?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I have one speaker, Steve Satterfield, 21041 Clarks Mountain Road, Rapidan.
All right, neighbor?
Good evening,
Do you think you can talk for 30 minutes?
easily.
Well, have at it.
We-
I
we-
really didn't want to go anywhere tonight.
Not
but si-
exactly.
But since you said you were having this affair, I didn't want to miss it. I heard the presentation on the economic development effort at the airport on May 9th. And I've also followed, of course, the successive drafts of the comprehensive plan that seem to be focused heavily on economic development. The May 9th presentation went into considerable detail to justify urgent efforts on economic development. There didn't appear to be any concern that this not get ahead of the comprehensive plan, but the presentation appeared to propose a much different kind of county than now exists. It appears to call for a major county involvement and investment to achieve results different than the market is likely to produce. The justification, as I read it, had two principal components. One, the citizens of Orange County, by overwhelming margins, want economic development. And two, that the current county situation is really pretty desperate. I'd like to discuss that a little bit and offer some alternate thoughts on the first point. If possible, I'll address the second point at a later time. I didn't think you would let me talk for a half hour, so I only made a 15-minute one. I ask your careful reflection before rushing pell-mell in the direction of so many other places. There are lots of uncertainties, but we do know some things. We know we have a lot of vacant commercial zone sites on Route 3 and other places in the county. We know that we have lots of room for expansion in the industrial park. We know we have little control of what occupies commercially zoned sites unless they're over 60,000 square feet and require a special use permit. We know that business locates where there are perceived opportunities and that it is a private market decision. We know the town of Orange governing body wants commercial development. We know that residential zoning is in place for thousands of additional homes on the Route 3 corridor and in the town of Orange, not to mention additional thousands of by right lots available. We know based on others' experience that growth depending on residential development will not lead to lower taxes for current citizens. So what's stopping this economic development if it's such a good idea? I submit the market will sort this out if we let it, and I think we should let it. But back to the justification for a strong county effort and possibly incurring major costs to achieve an outcome, in my opinion, of questionable desirability and maybe even more questionable feasibility. Results from the 2004 community survey were cited to demonstrate that the citizens of Orange County want economic development. I submit that the cited data represents a somewhat selective reading or partial reading of the community survey results in their entirety. I further suggest that even many of the statistics cited are ambiguous. And the three were, question 3, is growth too fast, too slow, or about right? About 2/3 said it's about right or too slow. I don't know what we know from that other than just that. The ones that thought about right or maybe they were in areas where it wasn't growing at all because it said in your area. Where it was too fast might have been where it was actually happening, so we don't really know too much about that. Should growth be, question number 5, should growth be directed to certain areas so others can remain rural? Overwhelmingly, yes. We'd probably all say yes. What's that mean? Somewhere else? You know, we're in favor of it, but not where we are. You know, so that kind of information wasn't there. Question number 6, how important are employment opportunities, blah, 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 new business, so on and so on. Overwhelming support for these. Well, there were 22 other parameters in question number 6. Many had conflicting results. 91% said to manage growth, 88% preserve rural, 4% to manage sprawl. And when they were asked in question number 15, what do you like most about Orange County? They liked it because it was rural. So anyhow, I believe the community survey has to be looked at as a whole. I actually worked on this survey. Very little of my input is in it, though, so I can criticize it all I want. I thought that that unless qualitative questions were asked, that the results would be ambiguous and subject to various interpretation. I think I was right on that one. Qualitative additions were not made because it was thought this would unduly complicate the questionnaire. However, when the results were in and tabulated, the supervisor that I was working with at the time called me up and said the results are a slam dunk for keeping the county rural. That was his interpretation. Of course, he was a couple supervisors ago. Survey aside, we do know that people have continued to move to the county and people continue to stay in the county. That tells me there must be something okay about the county and that the people prefer what we have compared to more highly developed conditions that are available close by. So why are they moving here if that's what they want? They could have moved there. I don't mean to say that no economic development is desirable. So what sort is? I suggest it's highly desirable to have opportunities for our long-term citizens who may have lost jobs when manufacturing facilities closed. So more jobs for people who are unemployed or have poorer jobs outside the county would be a plus. Generally, employment opportunities that do not increase population would be a good thing. But we need to be rigorous in our analysis. More jobs for people outside the county to move here for the new jobs doesn't benefit our current citizens. The presentation lamented the high percentage of residents who commute outside the county. The fact is, a lot of people have good jobs outside the county and moved here and commute to those jobs. More residential on Route 3 corridor will likely increase the percentage of people commuting outside the county. I would like to suggest that economic development should be based on our comparative advantages in agriculture and tourism. I think we should avoid subsidies. If a proposition won't stand on its own, it's probably not a very good proposition. Last thing I would touch on tonight is I think we're overlooking the value of retired people. Given our location, I think it's likely we're going to continue to attract relatively affluent retired people. They in turn will support relatively well-paid crafts jobs. They will be a fiscal benefit. The county has to do nothing to attract them. If we don't make our wonderful county like so many others, retirees will come here. They will join the community versus trying to change it into something readily available elsewhere. I know there are not many details yet. This is a general proposition at the moment. I hope you will consider my comments as you develop your plans and policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Do you have a second speaker?
Okay.
Robert Foster, 10812 Mill Ridge Lane.
Thank you for letting me speak. I dashed in at the last minute because I could see that he wasn't gonna last 30 minutes. Thought I'd try to get you back on schedule. I'm a resident of Spotsylvania County. My property line is Wilderness Run. The comprehensive plan quoted the Gateway study, which proposed a lake formed by damming up Wilderness Run.
You're the lake guy.
I'm the lake guy.
Okay.
And Shotgun Hill Branch. I'm the guy where, according to the last map from the last presentation of the Wilderness Gateway study, would lose about 80% of his property. So I have some personal interest in this, even though I'm not an Orange County resident. I would encourage you, since I don't have much knowledge of what's going on with the strategic initiative, but if you include something along those lines, I would strongly encourage you to coordinate with Spotsylvania County. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No other speakers? Well, in that case, I guess we will recess until 7:30.
Okay.
Call the meeting back to order. Have a public hearing. Randolph Rains for special use permit to open and operate a retail firearms store. Josh.
Me again.
Do you mind lifting the mic a little to your mouth?
It's not usually I have to lift stuff up to me. All right. Our public hearing tonight, as you said, is on behalf of Randolph Rains. It's SUP 13-02. Mr. Rains would like to open and operate a retail firearms store in his property located at 22365 Constitution Highway. That's in Unionville. It's near the intersection of Highway 20 and Village Road. It's about 9.5 acres in size. It's zoned agricultural, and has the same designation under the current comprehensive plan. His request is pursuant to section 70-303 of our zoning ordinance, which permits retail up to 4,000 square feet by way of an SUP. For those of you that were around, you might remember the SUP from 1988, which permitted rock and range construction. That's still active and currently utilized on the property. For Mr. Rains' application, we met with the ARC on April 23rd. And you could see in the staff report, we had comments from the Soil and Water Conservation District, the Building Department, the Fire and EMS, and the Health Department. And you can also see in there, we gave a positive recommendation of Mr. Rains' request. The Planning Commission met on May 16th and gave the public a chance to speak. We had one member who spoke positively of the application. And following that, the commission made their vote and voted unanimously to recommend approval of the application. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them, or we have the applicant here as well.
Anyone have any questions?
I have just one question, maybe of the applicant.
Sure.
Would you characterize any changes you need to make to the existing building, or any that
A
you're
little
planning?
remodeling and, handicap accessible bathrooms and handicap ramps, stuff like that.
Okay, but not changing the size?
No.
or anything?
No.
Okay.
Size of the exterior building will not be changed, other than some of the shop doors will be took out.
As I look at your building, you've got a large portion of the building with the big overhead doors.
Right.
And the smaller connection. Is that what the store is going to be?
That's the office, the
That's the
smaller
office.
connection.
And the store is going to be in the big part?
Yeah. Or at least part of it anyway. I'm not sure I'm gonna do all of it, but
Okay.
it'll be basically in the shop itself, not the office.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, in that case, we will open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers? Close public hearing.
Waiting for a motion?
Yes,
I
sir.
would recommend then that, I make a motion that we approve, this SUP as submitted.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Wilson? Mrs. Adams? Mr. Frame?
Aye.
Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank y'all, really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome.
Josh has quite a track record.
2-0, buddy. You're going good.
I can make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.